Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Game. I am here today with Becky Sauerbrunn, and normally we start our podcast together debating the important things, like is it Reese's Pieces or Reese's Pieces?
And what did we decide?
We decided that it's Reese's Pieces.
Of course, yeah, that's exactly what everyone else decided as well.
But today is a historic day in American soccer, in global soccer, really. I'm really honored that I get to be here with Becky to have this conversation, someone I've admired personally and professionally ever since I've known her. So we're going to get right into it for a very special episode today, probably the most special episode that we've done all year. Becky, we are here for you, so the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sam. I am retiring from the game, from the beautiful game. And it was such a good year. You know, I got to start the year hosting a trophy with the U.S. Women's National Team with the W Gold Cup. And then I got a full season where I just got to battle with Portland and fight through the adversity and challenges, like all the things that make a professional season. And I love that we got to push for the playoffs, that I got to make the playoffs one last time. And that last game against Gotham, like I got to leave my soul on the field. Like that's what it felt like. And it's funny, Sammy, we never got to talk about that game on Good Vibes, but I got that potential PK called on me. And I was like, obviously the Gotham players and my Thornies we were like kind of battling it out a little bit for that PK spot. Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of like, dear soccer gods, if you're watching this game right now, if I've done anything right in my career, like, please don't let this be a PK. And luckily, it wasn't a PK because it wasn't a handball.
Right. I agree.
But it was just kind of like a full circle moment where I was just like, okay, clearly I've done something right in my career, that we got to play this game straight up. I got to leave my soul on the field. And like, that's a soccer player ending. And of course I would have loved like a fairy tale hoisting another trophy, but that's like such the exception. And so I'm okay with it being a soccer player ending, that I got to play as many minutes as I did this year. And we saw so many of our colleagues and peers retire and like get their flowers and have the celebrations. I mean, Christine Sinclair basically got bottles of alcohol everywhere she went. And it was really lovely to see. And I'm so glad that they got that. But I don't think that's what I wanted. I think I wanted those quiet moments with the game where I could just sit in the moment and just really appreciate it. And so that's why I feel like this is kind of the time and the way that I wanted to make this announcement, that it was just the season's done, playoffs are over. It's just like a quiet moment. And yeah, it just felt right.
Well, I would love to be the first to say congratulations on an incredible career. Can you share with us some of the quiet moments that meant a lot to you as you knew that this would be your last year, but maybe not everybody knew?
I think the last game against Angel City at Providence Park, and the fact that it was an important game and we were fighting for a playoff spot, we needed a tie or a win. And it was just like a beautiful Portland night. It was rainy. The crowd was crazy. It was a packed house. You got to see amazing goals. It just like, it felt so good. And we were all celebrating afterwards because, you know, it's Sinky's last home game, and the Riveters do this thing where they give out a prize, not a prize, like a reward for the player of the season. And it was Hina. And like, I just love Hina. And it was just like all these beautiful moments in one package, and just getting to sit in that and just see it all happen, and just feeling like my heart was so full.
That's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you got to have a moment like that. How do you feel now, having said you're retiring, knowing that this announcement is going to be out? Do you feel relieved? Do you feel like a weight has been lifted? Like, how does that make you feel?
It's a lot of things. I think I keep coming back to like sad, but not heartbroken, because I think for so much of my career, I think maybe I was dreading the end of it, because I have no doubts that I have the best job in the world. Like, I got to play professional soccer for 16 years. Like, I got to represent my national team for 16 years. Like, it's a damn good career. And I'm like, what am I going to do next? Like, what's ever going to compare to this? And it was just scary. And it's just not as scary anymore. And I don't know if that's, Sam, because doing this podcast with you and kind of being introduced to new things in and around soccer that I can do. And so the ending is sad and a little scary, but I'm also kind of excited to see what's next. And maybe it won't be as awesome as playing, but maybe it'll be damn close.
Well, let's hope. I really do hope. Everything you've said so far, Becky, has been so thoughtful and emotional and in such true Becky style. For this podcast today, we're going to talk through your whole career, which is going to be really, really fun. I want to relive some of your accolades. I want to make you talk about some memories from some nights out and from some of your favorite games, from some of your favorite accomplishments. We know now that you're retiring, but I'm curious, before we go all the way back to the beginning, was there one moment in the past year or so where you knew this would be your last year?
I mean, I always thought at the beginning of this year, if it was a good year, that it would be my last one, because I think 2023 was so rough with the passing of my dad, with missing out on the World Cup, and just really struggling with chronic pain and trying to make it back to play. And so I really thought that, okay, if I had a real year where I could say goodbye to the game, that would be it. And I think that happened near the end of the season, where I looked back and I was like, this is it. Like, I've got to do what I've wanted to do.
I think what's standing out to me about what you're saying is you're almost like personifying the game, as if soccer is this presence in your life that has, and of course it is, it's really affected you. It's been this huge, like, always present thing to you, and you're giving it so much, I want to use the word credence, and I literally don't know if that's a word or the right word. You're just giving it so much power and clear importance in your life. And so I'm wondering if you could maybe share what the game means to you and how it has affected you as a person.
I mean, it's given me everything, like a sense of belonging from a young age, when you're kind of this like awkward kid and you want to fit in, but like you don't really know how to fit in. So what do you have? You have this like beautiful thing that brings everyone together and kind of equalizes the field. And so it gave me belonging. It gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me my education. Like, it got me to UVA, where I got to play and be a student athlete and graduate. It gave me a career, like it gave me a platform that I've been able to use to hopefully be a good steward of the game. I mean, it probably even gave me Zola. Like, he played on the men's soccer team. Like, there's always, like, everything that good in my life has come back to soccer. So yeah, it's given me a lot. So that's probably why I'm personifying it, because it's done a lot for me.
I know that is so beautiful. I think my hope for you is that the game can continue to give you a lot. And I think I speak for everybody when I say that you have given so much back to the game. Women's soccer in the US, across the world, has been so impacted by you as a player, but also you as a leader, somebody who's pushed for equal pay, who has always stood up for what is right. And I feel so proud to have been your teammate. I'm really, really grateful that our careers cross paths and that now we get to continue to be friends and make stuff together and be a part of the game together. So thank you, Becky. Everybody out there is so lucky to either know you or know of you. And this game, all of us are so much better off for having you here.
Thanks, Sammy. I really appreciate that. And I cannot stress it enough. Like, being able to do this with you and Lynn has made the future just not as scary. And so thank you.
I totally agree with that. I think that having this kind of project that you work on in the last few years of your career really helps you make that transition. But we're going to get more into the transition towards the end of this podcast. For now, I actually want to go all the way back to the beginning. I want to take us through the whole story of Becky Sauerbrunn's career. So let's go back to St. Louis and some of your earliest soccer memories. I know that you grew up playing with boys and playing a lot of indoor soccer. Is there one single moment or memory that you can point to from those early days that really made you fall in love with the game?
It's a little thing, but when I first started playing, it was at a local park. And so I'd walk there from the house with my mom and dad, and you'd play with a bunch of your school friends. Like, my elementary school is right across the road from the park, Stacy Park. And the moment where I think I really fell in love with the game was that first time that I kicked a ball and I could get it off the ground. And I think I was maybe 5, like a normal age for a starting soccer player. But something about that is a core memory, because I do, after that moment, just remember being like, how many times can I kick it off the ground? And I'm going to start practicing in my backyard. And it was such a fun, key moment that I will always remember. And I can picture it. Stacey Park, there wasn't even a net on the goal. We were just all shooting at the same moment. Probably no one noticed it, but I did.
That it honestly strikes a memory in me of juggling like on my thighs and keeping the ball up. And like, I probably got 6, but it was that moment of like, oh my God, I got 6. Like, I can try to get 10. And it was this instant spark of like, I want to get better at this. It's fun. And there is like a goal. There is like something to strive for. And I think that that's when I was just completely ruined forever, that like I would always then be chasing some greater goal and some next kind of number of juggles. But it's so cool to hear that it was, for both of us, such a simple thing that made us fall in love with the game.
Yeah. And I think so much of what has kept me loving soccer is that sense of accomplishment. And I love training. Like, if I could train for the rest of my life and not have to play games, I would actually do that, because I just love that sense of accomplishment where you're trying something new, you're doing the reps, and all of a sudden it clicks. And then you do it again and it's easier. And then you do it with pressure on you, and you do it in the small-sided. And just that feeling like, I just learned and did something new today, that to me was so addictive.
I was just going to say addictive. It's like such a healthy thing to be addicted to, though.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
I mean, we spent a lot of our careers chasing it.
I know. Well, and I don't know that it goes away. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, and now you're starting to appreciate this too. It's like I have put a lot of that feeling into like, well, how can I get better at this? What we're doing right now, doing a podcast. And it's cool that it's ingrained in us and that we want to keep learning and growing and getting better. And I think it's something that you'll find will carry you through your whatever career is next as well. Whatever you do next, like having that trait or quality or characteristic is still a part of you. It's not going to go away because you stop playing soccer.
Yeah, I mean, that I can already see that happening a little bit, so that makes complete sense. I hope it's not to the degree that I was necessarily chasing it with soccer, but I guess we shall see.
We will see. Okay, so I know that we've spoken before about the 99ers, the 1999 Women's World Cup team that won, and the impact that team had on both of us growing up. And I have talked to you about this. You actually went to see one of those games in 1999, the match versus Nigeria in Chicago at Soldier Field. It was a crowd of over 65,000 people. What did going to that game do for you?
Initially, I thought it was just going to be like a fun trip with some of my JB Marine soccer teammates. And then I got there and it was a hot Chicago day, but the stadium was packed. You saw everyone had painted faces. They had the jerseys. The game was incredible. There were so many goals. And for me, it was like an inflection point where I was just like, what is this? How can I be a part of it? And then I remember being glued to the TV the rest of the tournament and watching the final in my living room with my dad and watching the women win and seeing them celebrating on the field. And that was the moment where I was like, I need to know what that feels like. I need to know what it feels like to be that happy and joyful after winning something in that way.
That's so beautiful. I'm not going to just keep saying I feel the same way, Becky, the whole podcast, but I felt the same way. I know that you were 14 when you went to that game and when that tournament was going on. And I found this stat about you when you were in high school. You need to tell us if this is true. Your senior year of high school, did you score 21 goals and have 19 assists?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. And I was also a center back, which is more a testament to maybe the quality of
Becky Sauerbrunn as a striker?
Of my high school soccer conference. I don't know it was necessarily a me thing. But yeah, I scored a decent amount in high school.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Do you think there was any world in which you could have played forward?
No chance. Like even in high school, I was playing center back or stopper because we were not doing a flat back four at that point. maybe a little like center mid, but yeah, my heart was always in the back line.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. But everybody, if you didn't hear me the first time, 21 goals and 19 assists in 1 year of high school soccer. It's incredible. I didn't score that many goals.
Stop it.
I did not.
Well, you probably also played in an area in district where the competition was maybe just stronger.
There is no competition for Becky Sauerbrunn. We all know that. So you went on after high school to play college soccer at the University of Virginia. And I know that Steve Swanson, your college coach, had a huge impact on developing you as a player. So I'm wondering if you can just talk to us a little bit about Steve and how he helped you take your game to the next level.
Oh, Steve. I think one of the best ever. Like, such a great dude, such a great coach. I think he knew, because he was my U15, U16 national team coach, that I had aspirations to play with the senior team at some point. So I think he knew that that's where I wanted to go, and I was going to need some help. And there were players on the team who that wasn't their aspiration. They wanted to play soccer and graduate, get their degree. So he, held me to a different standard because the expectations were different. And I had so many individual sessions just learning all the skills of being a center back, but also like so much about film breakdown and him showing me clips of the men's Italian national team and just the way, Cannavaro or Bonucci, like these players can run a line. And I just appreciate that so much, that he really broke the game down and taught me it, so that I feel like that helped with the longevity of my career, and that I could read the play, I could read the game, I could read the setup of the other team and figure out what I needed to do and what the people around me needed to do for us to be successful. And I really think so much of that just goes back to that like core foundational education from him and just the technique of being able to do it. Like, Sam, I could not hit a long ball going into college at all. Like I could lift the ball up when I was 5, but for whatever reason, if I had to hit it towards somebody, it wasn't going to happen. And I just remember so clearly him just literally breaking down the steps of hitting a long ball, step by step by step, and just repeating it week in, week out, year in, year out. And I can't say I can hit a long ball very good still, but I'm way better now.
That is incredible. I think I have a lot of experience with Steve Swanson as well, and I agree. His passion for the game is contagious, and to have had him influence you and your technical development, but also your tactical understanding of the game sounds so influential. You also, this is one more college story we have to tell. I know that you got knocked out of the ACC tournament on penalties 1 year, and then I know you had to get up early the next morning and give a presentation.
Oh, yeah. It was my first year, and as a lot of college soccer players know, when you get knocked out of the major tournament, you go with your teammates and you commiserate and maybe you have some bevies. And I somehow made it back to my dorm and somehow set an alarm. And I had to wake up and go to English grammar and give a presentation on the semicolon. And I'm not even sure if I was fully sober for the entire presentation. I did get through it and I did get a fine grade in that class. But man, that is like college to a T right there.
That really is. I am surprised about that from you, Becky, but you know what? The semicolon, it just, it's pretty simple, right? Anybody could give that presentation.
Yeah, very, very simple grammar usage, but when you're doing it slightly inebriated, it can be a little bit more difficult to explain.
Okay, well, thank God we got through that. Towards the end of your collegiate career, you were starting to get recognized by the U.S. women's national team. And right when your eligibility ended in 2008, you got your first call-up and first cap in a Four Nations tournament in China. Can you walk me through that first cap? Like, how did you manage your emotions and nerves as the game kicked off? Like, what were you feeling?
First, we should probably go back to when I got the invite.
Oh, please.
Okay, because I was still in college and Zola was in my apartment. And I was like, I just got an email from Cheryl Bailey, who I'm pretty sure is the general manager for the U.S. women's national team. So I click on it and it's an invite into January camp. And I am like freaking out. Zola's freaking out. He's like, yeah, let's go celebrate. I'm like, absolutely not. I need to sit down. I need to write this email, send it back. I need to go train. Like there's all these things I need to do before we can celebrate. And then the camp was in Los Angeles, where so many of our camps are. And Bri Scurry, and I've told this story to you before, she was my roommate. And
Oh, that's right.
idolized Bri because of 1999
Yeah.
and the huge saves that she made throughout the tournament, especially in the final. And I like walk into the room and I'm like, oh my gosh, where am I? What world am I in? Like, I am sharing a room and a bathroom with Bri Scurry.
That is so crazy. Wait, you've told me this before too. Wasn't she watching the news or something as you walked in the room and you were like, oh my God, it's Bri?
Yeah, she was watching CNN and I was like, am I going to have to pretend that I know
Global
current
news?
events? Because at the time I wasn't watching the news like I was supposed
Well,
to be.
you were fresh out of college.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I watched a lot of CNN and I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. This is what I watch all the time.
Yeah.
Keep it on.
Yeah. Of course.
Anything for
all
you,
the
Brian.
time.
All the time.
How was that first camp?
First camp, it was intimidating, obviously. I have huge imposter syndrome. So I'm like, what am I doing here? I remember we did a 1v1 exercise and I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm about to get just worked. But I actually didn't get worked. I did pretty good. And I'm like, okay, like I can do this. I can hang. And I think that gave me a little bit more confidence that it kept building day in and day out. We did an inner squad. And I thought I did great at the inner squad. Was playing out of pressure really well. I was going against A-Rod a lot. Amy Rodriguez, who had been on the team for a little bit already, but I'd played with her with the U19 national team. So it was nice to go against somebody that I kind of knew.
Yeah.
And I somehow made the roster to go to the Four Nations tournament, which was, we were leaving directly from LA to China. And one of the center backs got injured. I think it was Kat Whitehill. And so I got to start my first cap, which, as you know, is like kind of crazy. Doesn't happen very often. And we're playing Canada and we're doing great. We wind up winning, but I basically like get my face bashed in by Melissa Tancredi, a Canadian player who I've had like a grudge against her since then. So I had to come off early and they had to do the whole resetting my nose in the locker room. And it's just kind of like I had never really left the field for an injury before. And that was my first cap and, of course, like my first injury. But I mean, we've all broken our nose playing for the women's national team. Sammy, you've done that. I watched it.
I was going to have you lean in and show us if your nose is straight because I know mine's not.
Oh, I absolutely have a deviated septum. I cannot breathe out of my nose. I will.
Do you snore?
Asphyxiate. I don't if I'm on my side, but if I'm on my back, it's like a 50-50.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, whatever. I mean, we look fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so that was your first cap. That was against Canada in China. Did you feel then like, okay, I'm on the national team. I'm going to keep coming in?
No, because that's never how I've rolled. Like I've always been I'm going to wait here patiently for the email or the text or the call to invite me into the next camp. And after that tournament, I got to play in the final against China, which was really cool. But I had this like MacGyvered mask because they didn't have an actual mask yet. So they were basically like using Velcro from old shin guards and they molded some plastic for my face. Like that's where we were at the time. And I had to wear that in the final game.
Oh my God.
But sadly, I had a meeting with Pia Sundaga, who was the coach at the time. And she was like, we just don't think you're ready. So we're going to put you back with the 23s. And like, maybe if you show well, we'll bring you back up. But it took 2.5 years before I even got another sniff of the national team.
Wow. Okay. Well, and was that in the run up to the 2011 World Cup?
Yes, exactly. So I was playing in the WPS for the Washington Freedom.
Okay. You ended up making the final roster for the 2011 World Cup. And in the quarterfinal, Rachel Bueller got a red card, meaning she'd be suspended for the semifinal. And that opened up a pathway for you to make your first start in a major tournament for the U.S. women's national team in a semifinal against France. And you told me this before this, that when you knew you were going to start, you just went for a walk with Zola, your partner, and were just trying to wrap your head around kind of the magnitude of the occasion. So I want you to like take us inside that moment. You're walking with Zola and getting yourself ready mentally for your first big start in a semifinal of a World Cup.
Well, Zola and I like had this thing for all the major tournaments that we would always go for a walk, like every night. Like it didn't matter if I was playing or not playing. And so before the tournament started, I kind of knew that I wasn't going to play. We had done an inter squad, or not an inter squad, a scrimmage against Norway, like a closed door. And I was the only player that didn't play. So I was kind of like, okay, read the writing on the wall. Like you're not
you're
in the
last
plans to play. Yeah. You're the last off the bench.
I've been there.
Like, haven't we all? And so I remember walking with him, after the group stage and just being like, man, I just really want to play. I really want to get some minutes. I just don't think it's going to happen. And just being like pretty sad about it. And of course, being a good teammate, but just really hoping that I was going to get a moment. And then, like you said, the red card happened and Rachel Bueller was suspended. And it's the night before the game and I'm walking with Zola. And so much of the themes of our walks have been like, I'm so hungry. I really want to play. And all of a sudden I was like, do I want this? Did I manifest
scared.
this? And now I have it. I'm scared. Should I be out there? But it was such an important moment for me in my career, because that was when like I could really test and see if I had what it took to be an international player. And I mean, I was thrown in to a semifinal of a World Cup against France. And I didn't do bad. I mean, we won the game, so it's not like I was the reason we lost. So I left that match being like, okay, like I'm here. I think I can do this. I just showed my staff, my team, myself what I'm capable of. And to me, that was a really important moment, just trusting myself that I did have a future with that team.
Yeah. I actually want to go back to your walk with Zola for a minute, because I went on a similar walk with Pat in Lyon before the 2019 World Cup final. And I remember it was the first time all tournament that I had any sense of peace, of like, I'm going to be okay because I like have this. And I want to like give Zola a minute here, because you guys have been together for so long. You've been through so much. He's been there for all these ups and downs that we're talking through. And I'm curious what it is he's done for you by being such a consistent person in your life.
I think for my entire career, and we talk about that this as athletes, it's the career is so volatile. One week you're in, 1 week you're out, one night you win, one night you don't. And you just can't really rely on anything. But if you have that support system that is steady and consistent and you can always fall back on and lean on, how important that is. And Zola has been that for me for 19 years. I mean, basically from close to the beginning of college, throughout all of this, through all the professional seasons, through all the international games and tournaments. And I mean, if he was on this, he would tell you, the tournaments are harder for our loved ones than they are for us. They are stress balls. Even Pat, I know, talked to Zola about this during the 2019 World Cup and he's like, does it get any easier or better? And Zola's like, no, it's only going to get worse, because they know what it's like to win now. Like it's now like they have to keep winning or it gets taken from them. And then you have to deal with them when they don't win. And that is way worse.
Yeah, the partners and the families definitely go through a lot. Is there anything that you feel you'll say to Zola in the coming weeks or months to kind of thank him for this time? Or do you feel you've already said and demonstrated that all?
I would like to think that I have thanked him profusely throughout my entire career. I think about all the Christmas holidays where we're in random places and I'm dragging him out in the freezing rain or snow to take some reps, and for him just to kick balls at me. And, like I'm sure you've made Pat do it. I think we've all made our partners do this at some point or another. And I did that to him for like 16 years. And he never complained. Well, he complained about the cold. He did complain about the cold, but he never complained about the work. And because he knew what it meant to me and what I needed to make sure that I could stay at an elite level. And I think because he'd done it himself as an athlete, like he played collegiately, he had a sip of water professionally. So I think having someone who knew what it took and continues to take, I think helped me so much throughout my career.
Well, shout out to the partners. Shout out to Zola.
Shout out.
Shout out. Freaking love him. Okay, so you got through 2011, and then you were a part of the team in 2012 that won a gold medal at the London Olympics. I know this had a huge influence on you. You came off the bench in 3 games, including the final. And I'm curious, as you went through that tournament and you played a little bit of a more minimized role, what was the feedback that you were getting? I mean, you guys won, which is incredible. I'm sure it was so cool to be a part of that. How did you feel as a player and your influence on that team?
Going into that tournament, I really felt like I was playing some of my best soccer. And I remember thinking maybe I have a chance of being a starter going into 2012. And they tried me at different positions because I think they maybe wanted to get me on the field, but they just couldn't find the right combination. And so I was, once again, like 2011, like super hungry, wanting minutes. I'm so glad I got into those 3 games. I got into that epic semi against Canada at Old Trafford. I got to play the last little bit at Wembley. So it wasn't a lot of time, but I'm still so glad that I got to be on the field at that final whistle to have a gold medal, to share that with the group. And my role was always, you're pushing that starting back line. Like you're probably not going to get minutes unless something happened. And the reason I got in was because something happened. There was a cramp and a concussion. And so I was just taking the minutes that I could get. And Pia, at the end of her time as our coach, she wrote these individual letters to all of us, which was really lovely that she took the time to do that. And in my letter, she said, like, you could have been a starter, but it's just not your time. And her role as coach was to put the best team out there, and I wasn't a part of that best team. And she believed I had it in me. It just wasn't the right time. And I remember that really not hurting. I mean, you never want to hear that you're not a part of what's going to make this team the best it can be, but you're close. And so I took that and built it into my confidence that when the new coach came in, which was Tom Sermani, that maybe this will be my time. And so I still put my head down. I worked really hard. And then Tom came in and everything was kind of being evaluated at ground zero again. And that was my time where I actually really made a push to start to get more minutes.
Yeah, and I think that push was partly tied with you were playing such great soccer with your club team in Kansas City. You won NWSL championships with them in 2014 and 2015 in that build up towards that 2015 World Cup. And this was the first time that you'd won something at the club level. I'm curious to just take a brief break from the national team. What was the state of the NWSL at that time? What was it like? I feel like it's kind of folklore these days to say that Kansas City was playing at a high school stadium, but you were there, so you tell us.
Oh, I absolutely was there. It was opening match of the NWSL at Shawnee Mission High School, and we were playing Portland. And it was one of those high school fields that there was like lacrosse, rugby, soccer. I don't even know what other sports were on that field, but you didn't even know when the ball was going out of bounds. Like that's how many lines were on the field. My jersey, I think like 2 days before we got to see our jerseys, and my last name said Sauerbrunn, not Sauerbrunn. So there's a V. And I was like, that's actually pretty cool if my name was Sauerbrunn, but it's not. So it's just all these little things, like traveling. We would have 2 connections to get to Seattle. Like it was just shenanigans everywhere in the league.
It was shenanigans. Do you think at that time, did the league still feel kind of precarious? I mean, I got drafted in 2015, and I know we were kind of in like a 1 year at a time phase because the previous 2 leagues had folded.
Very precarious. And like you said, it's because the other 2 leagues didn't make it past the 3rd year. And so I remember being with players like Nicole Barnhart and Lauren Holiday and us being like, this isn't right. This isn't to a professional standard that we need to be elite athletes, and not really knowing how much we could push and who to ask, because we didn't have a players association for the league at that time. We only had the Women's National Team Players Association, and US Soccer were the stewards of the NWSL. So anything that we asked for had to go through US Soccer. And so we kind of used our status as national team players to start making these little gains in the NWSL. as far as like field and staffing and actually having a full-time athletic trainer, which was not the case for a lot of teams. Like, to look at where we've come from to where we are now, we still have things that we need to improve, but it is a drastic difference.
That era, I remember feeling like the national team was the place to thrive. Like, I think that the league was still in a little bit of a precarious spot and you weren't going to necessarily get all the resources you needed there. But if you could just make it to the national team, then you'd have the right training environment and you'd have kind of the ability to get what you needed. And again, to see how far the league has come from then to now, I feel like NWSL players now have what they need to succeed and to thrive. And I think that's a journey that you and I have both witnessed, and it's been incredible to see. I want to stick with like 2014-15 Kansas City. Your team was really special. Like, what stands out to you about those couple of years with that team?
We were really good, and it's funny because I don't think a lot of people wanted to go to Kansas City in 2013. I know the national team players got to kind of pick the places that they were interested in, and I immediately said Kansas City because it's close to St. Louis. My family could come see me play. But Vlatko Andonovski was this unknown coach, whereas all the other teams kind of had known coaches. And I get there, and our team is really freaking good. We play really good soccer. And that first season, I don't think anyone knew what to expect. We didn't know what to expect from ourselves, but you know, we almost won the Shield. We got all the awards at the end of the season. We made a really strong playoff push. We lost to Portland, which eventually won that year. And then in 14 and 15, same thing. We wind up winning the championships against Seattle. And so it was just for me, a great place to start my NWSL career, because the soccer that we were playing, I thought, was really beautiful and like timeless. And it was just a really fun group of players.
You're like making me want to go back and watch highlights from the finals of those years, but I bet it will be on like such a wonky camera.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like my camera before I cleaned it off earlier.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you won in 2015, which was a great year for you for club and country. The U.S. Women's National Team won the World Cup for the first time since 1999, and you started every single game that tournament. The final was a very memorable 5-2 victory over Japan. Can you remember what was going through your mind as the final whistle blew of that World Cup final?
I think a lot of it was disbelief and relief and, of course, joy. I think because 1999 was so huge for us, the fact that the national team had not won since then, and all of a sudden I was like, I got to be a player on this team that put a star on this jersey next to the 1999ers. I was like, what is this? This is unbelievable. This is crazy amazing. And I was just so proud of the team, but also like the backline group, because we were probably the most inexperienced of the lines. And I think people weren't knowing what to expect from us. You know, Julie Ertz came in kind of the last minute, solidified her spot as center back next to me. And then it was like a beautiful tournament. And the final was just crazy. Like, even at halftime when we were up 4-1, I remember going in and being like, if we can score 4 goals in this first half, like maybe they can score 4 goals in the second half, and not feeling it all settled. I'm sure people with a 3-goal lead in the World Cup final are probably thinking like, it's in the bag. I was like, this is not in the bag. Lock up, ladies.
Yeah. I mean, terrifying. I love what you said about the star. Like, that's the same when we won in 2019. That's the exact same thing. That I don't know if you've seen that video of me bawling my eyes out looking at the 4th star on the jersey after we won the World Cup.
I mean, you cry a lot, so I probably saw it.
I know, I'm crying right now as you're telling the story, but it's like, I think when the jersey means so much to you, knowing that you were a part of something that's now changed the jersey forever. Mm-hmm. Like, and the way you worded it was, that star of 2015 is next to the 99er star. And like, you did that. And I just think that it's emotional because you've worn that jersey, you've idolized it, you've wanted to be a part of it. It's like the dream, and you did it. It's like all hits you at once.
Yeah. And that's why when the final whistle blows and people ask, what does it feel like? It's like, you can't even really put it into words because it's so many different things.
And it's so pure.
Oh,
I
it
think
is.
that I'm teary right now too, because it's like other happinesses are more complicated. Like, I don't know. To me, I feel joy in my life, like my dog. My dog is a perfect example. That's pure joy. It's just that I love my dog so much, but that's so rare. Like, I think that winning and your dog are the purest joys.
Oh man, I hope there are other ones out there too.
I do too. I'm waiting to find out what they are, but they're out there for us, Becky. Okay, Sam, enough about you. You told me that you celebrated your 30th birthday during that World Cup in 2015, and you said that kind of made you feel like you were late to the party because you were one of the older players, but this tournament was really when you like started every game and you were like a solid player on this team. And I wanted to see if you could talk more about that feeling of maybe being like late.
Yeah, I felt like such a late bloomer, and celebrating my 30th in camp. I remember, you get the cake, you get everyone singing, and me thinking to myself, like, this very well could be my last one. And to get to play all those minutes and get to play in all those games, I feel very fortunate because at the time I really was like, this could be it. I mean, who's going to bring a 34, 35-year-old to the next World Cup? Luckily, they did. But at the time, it was kind of like you need to live in every single moment. And I was so dialed in that tournament. Even if you talk to Zola about it, he'd be like, you were not with me when we were taking those walks. Like, your brain was prepping for that next match. And it kind of felt like that at times. I was like so dialed and locked into that tournament.
Did your performance that tournament change your view of yourself as a player?
It was a strong tournament for me, and I think that's because my back line was also had a super strong tournament. I don't know if it changed what I thought about myself as a player. I think I knew I had it in me somewhere, and I think for whatever reason it all came out in that 2015 tournament where I could do it consistently back to back to back, because I like looking at 2019, and I am jumping ahead a little bit, like that tournament was very inconsistent for me.
You mentioned earlier that you have imposter syndrome. Did having such a strong tournament make that go away and make you go, I do belong here?
No, not at all. And I don't know if I wish it had made it go away. I think I needed the imposter syndrome throughout my career because I think it definitely kept me humble. It kept me working extremely hard and never taking anything for granted. And I don't know if that's the healthiest way to go about thinking about yourself, but for me, it worked because I have never thought that I was a shoo-in to get invited into the next camp, or I was a shoo-in for minutes or starts. I was always, I need to work hard. I need to earn this every single day, in every training, in every meeting, in every weight session, like everything I had to earn it.
I just want to say that I learned that from you. I think that there's conversations that go on in camp where people are planning out their lives and people are saying, okay, well, the next camp, what are you doing until the next camp? And Becky would always go, if I get invited to the next camp, this is my plan. And I adopted that. For a long time, I truly also felt that way and probably felt that way also my whole career. But I kind of took this hint from you that there is no assuming and there is no guarantee that you'll be invited to the next camp. And so you do always have to kind of hedge against that. And I think that saying that was like an important lesson for all of us younger players to be like, nobody is guaranteed anything. And we all know that Becky will be on this team until her last day playing. But I had so much respect for that you never took it for granted. And I think that you impacted all of us by doing that and by demonstrating that none of us could take it for granted. So I just wanted to say that to you.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that.
So good at taking a compliment.
So awkward. I'm sorry.
I don't know where to look.
Easier. I know, like, where do I? Okay.
Thank God we're not in the same room.
Super awkward.
Okay, let's skip ahead to 2016 in the Olympics. We lost to Sweden in the quarterfinal. And this was another really big moment for you. You said that you actually considered retiring in that moment. And I wanted to ask you about that and about why.
I think because 2015 had gone so well, I really was like, okay, 2016 is another moment. We can get another gold. And I felt really responsible in that Sweden game for our loss. And I was just carrying that after the game and thinking like, okay, well, I did kind of think that this World Cup was going to be the last one for me. Like possibly this Olympics this is the sign that this is also my last one. And, we were all drinking around the pool and getting a little too deep in the caipirinhas. And luckily, when I was talking to Sonnet, dear Sonnet, who plays center back, who was probably like, yeah, you should retire, like get out of here so I can take your spot. She was like, no, you can't retire. Like absolutely get that out of your mind. So I will credit Sonnet for saving my career for a few more years for sure. But yeah, I carried that mistake and that weight for a really long time.
How did you bounce back from that?
I think as all soccer players bounce back, you just have to work through it. And I trained harder and tried to play as well as I could. And I kind of just kept that kernel of guilt with me so that I kind of always knew it was there, but I could try to avoid ever feeling that way again. And also probably not the healthiest way to go about functioning. But for me, a lot of my motivation was like, you can never let the team down again.
Yeah, that's really like a deep sense of responsibility for the team, which is what makes you you and what makes you so special and such a impactful leader. And so I actually do have this story that I want to share about 2017 and 2018 when we were both injured. So in 2017, you and I were the only players on the national team, everybody, listen up, to start every single game in 2017. Obviously, I was so honored. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the same stat as Becky. This is such an incredible investment in me and my development. It was really, really cool. And you and I have joked since that then we both wound up injured, obviously, because we played so much.
Yep.
I ended up with a knee injury, and I know that you were also home. And going into 2018, we were both missing camp because we were both injured. I was alone in Boston. This was everybody, the beginning of my knee injury. So it was like a disaster. Like it was really serious. I was in a straight leg brace. I couldn't put any weight on it. I was really like scared and I didn't have a lot of support. And you would reach out to me and check in on me. And I actually felt like you were my connection to the national team when I really didn't get much else from the national team. And I felt like you were also going through something really hard, and your leadership style was personal connections. Like you knew how difficult it was to be injured and to be away from the team. And even though I was like kind of new, you considered what I was going through. And you've talked before about with leadership, you're naturally introverted. You even said one time at like an ODP camp as a kid, you had to set a goal for yourself to a certain number of times for you to talk out loud to force you to get more comfortable being vocal. And I feel like I understand that from playing with you, that you're leading through your connections and you're getting outside of your own comfort zone, your own introversion, and building relationships with people. And that's the type of leadership that I've come to really admire. It's like taking time out of your own world of I'm home, I'm injured, I'm alone, but I need to check on Sam. So I wanted to tell that story because it always meant a lot to me. And I actually want to see how you kind of forced yourself to do that and how you might advise another introvert to be a leader.
I think so much of leadership is authenticity. And I have gotten it wrong in the past when I've been named captain and trying to be something that I'm not. And me reaching out to you, Sam, like I wanted to because I liked you. You were my friend and I knew that you were hurting. I was hurting. Like, let's share our scars and let's get through this together. And I have found that for me is my leadership style, is building relationships, building trust, showing that I care. And I hope, as like a part of like a legacy that people look at me and think like she's a player's player. Like if there was anything wrong, if I had any questions, if I needed anything, like I could go to Becky. And if she didn't have the answer, she would find somebody that had the answer for me. And it wasn't when I was trying to be something that I was not, that was the hardest. Like I was the most uncomfortable using up too much of my energy when really like I just needed to be real with myself. Like, I'm not the high energy, rah, get in your face. I'm going to be the pull you aside and talk to you and see how you're doing and figure out what makes you tick. And can I bring more to you? And I'm glad that you bring up that story. I'm really happy that meant a lot to you, because it meant a lot to me too, that you were willing to share your story with me and your pain with me.
Yeah, I was like literally so honored and excited to be texting you. I was like, oh, I have to go answer Becky. Hang on. Okay, this is going to be a little fun section. Talk about 2019. We won the World Cup together. Literally so fun. But you did tell me that you felt like 2019 was a tournament of highs and lows for you. You had some of your best performances and some of your worst performances. Is there one moment or memory from that tournament that is like the first thing that comes to mind when you think back on 2019?
Sadly, if I think back to 2019, I'm always going to be like that Spain game where I give up the ball and Jenny Hermoso chips Alyssa. And I mean, it's so clearly my fault. And they tie it up and it's this huge match. So unfortunately, my mind will always go there. But then I also think of the high of playing France in the quarters, in Paris, Friday night, packed crowd, and just the feel of that game and feeling like we couldn't put a foot wrong. I mean, Sam, you put a foot
Until
wrong.
Until I did.
When you dropped too early on the set piece, but that's a side conversation. That's okay. It all worked out. But having a game like that right after the Spain game and it just the whole tournament being so up and down for me, it was just, that was very difficult. But when I look back at all the tournaments that I've played in, I think I might be most proud of 2019 because I got through that adversity and I really had to like find myself a couple times during that tournament to get good performances in. And luckily I found those performances in that France and in that Netherlands game.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, bless up. I could just kiss every single one of my teammates' foreheads to this day for letting us win 2019. It is just the best thing. And actually, I do remember during the celebrations when we won, you had to leave the party and get stitches. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so the final, Van de Donk and I get into a little head tussle. And of course, classic. I have a huge hole in my face. So
they should have just given you a swim cap.
They should have. I don't know if we had them in the toolkit at that point. But so everyone's celebrating at the party. And I have to go back with our doctor, who was an orthopedic surgeon. So he's not great at doing like facial stitches. So he stitches my face up and we get to, I think it's New York, right? For the ticker tape parade. And you guys are all partying at that pool party. Sam, you might not remember a whole lot about that pool party.
I don't know if I was even there.
Oh, you were there apparently. I've heard the stories. But I had to miss it because I had to go to the plastic surgeon so they could re-stitch up my face.
Oh, well, Becky, I'm going to be honest with you right now. I'm actually glad that you missed it because if you had seen me like that, I don't think you would respect me as much.
Or maybe I'd respect you more.
I don't think so. Okay, a classic needing facial stitches. Do you have a scar?
I do. Yeah, I've got a little scar. The plastic surgeon did an amazing job, but I will tell you it's pretty traumatic to get your stitches taken out. And then he had to excise some of the extra skin because it had been like smashed and it was going to basically rot. And then pull those pieces together and then re-stitch it. But my cranium was bruised. And so he's like pushing down. And I was like, the stitch was fine, but the pressure on my skull, to this day, I'm like, oh, that was pretty gnarly.
Oh my gosh, Becky literally giving life and limb to win the World Cup. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so after we won, the battle for equal pay really took center stage. You were a huge leader in spearheading that fight that culminated in the U.S. women's national team signing a new collective bargaining agreement with U.S. Soccer in 2022 that, among other things, equalized payments for national team appearances, equalized FIFA prize money, as well as equal quality for travel, accommodations, and playing conditions. I was with you on the field in DC when we signed the agreement, and it was honestly one of the proudest moments of my whole career. How was that whole experience for you, and what did it mean to finally see everything we had fought for finally get like inked?
It was such a cool night. I loved that it was in DC. We had just won a game, and to have everyone on the field who had been a part of it, and I wish even more of like the 99ers and like even the 85ers, like the people that started the program. I wish more of them could be on the field to celebrate with us, because they're the ones that started this whole thing. They're the ones that put women's soccer on the map in 99. They're the ones that pushed for a livable wage, that basically used the momentum from the success of the 99 World Cup to create a professional league. And now we're in iterations of that league, like where people are getting paid good money, they're being taken care of. Like all of that started with the women that came before us. And so the only difference I would have made on that night is having more of them there. But to be able to be there with that current group that kind of pushed it across the line was really special. And to have a bunch of like labor leaders in sports, in society be there. And I was so honored to be with you and Crystal as player representatives, and to actually sign that CBA with Cindy Parlow-Combe, the president of the federation. And to kind of, I actually gave a speech, which, you know, I don't usually like to do things like that, but to be able to thank all those people that were there that had come before us was really, really special and really cool. And of course, there was like an awesome party afterwards.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think something that struck me about the equal pay fight was that, and what you were saying about leadership really is a part of this. It's like there were a lot of players who had really, really important pivotal roles in making that happen. And some of us were good at some things and some of us were good at other things. And there was never like a fight to be the one leader. Like each person that was involved was good at being on TV or reading through, I don't know, lawsuit documents, or explaining to the team what we were trying to do, or talking to the lawyers. Like everybody had skills that they were utilizing. And what that group taught me was like, there doesn't have to just be the one leader. Like we all should use our best qualities in order to get the best result.
1,000%. And I think that's so much of leadership, is just empowering others to do what they do best. And so true. Like if ever there was going to be a TV thing, we knew, okay, it's going to be Press, Pino, and Alex.
Yeah.
And if it was reading through the documents, it was going to be you and me, you know? So like we all played our part. But I think what is so special about that group is that we all really respected what the other person could do and their contribution to the whole process.
Totally. That was a really special thing to go through. It was really difficult at times. My God, I remember like specifically during COVID when the judge like ruled against us and we were on this long conference call and like it felt like it was over and then it wasn't. And it was a really, really inspiring and incredible team to be a part of, and something that when I look back on it, I'm like, I feel like we get accredited with that as a group, but I could never have been a part of anything like that without you guys. And so I'm really grateful that I was on the team when the team accomplished that.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you were on the team too, because you did a lot of work, and I know you keep kind of emphasizing
I sat on a lot
yourself.
of conference calls.
I'll
say
know.
that.
And I think so much of it is the grunt work and the not sexy work and the stick with it and making sure that people are communicating and knowledgeable. Like that stuff was really important, and you were a big part of that.
Well, thank you for saying that. It actually brings me to this other area that was difficult for all of us to grapple with that also happened in 2022. The Sally Yates report, which detailed systemic abuse by a number of coaches at a number of teams in the NWSL, got released. And this was a really difficult time for the NWSL. It was a devastating report. It sent shockwaves through the entire women's soccer world. And Becky, some of the allegations put your club team, the Portland Thorns organization, in an unwanted spotlight. And I imagine, because I also know firsthand, that it was really difficult for the players to compartmentalize everything at that time and focus on playing. But somehow you did, and the Thorns won the NWSL championship that year, beating the Kansas City Current 2-0 in Washington, D.C. I want to know what the experience of grappling with the report was like for you as a veteran on the team who kind of had to help guide some younger players through a really traumatic thing.
It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I remember we were with the national team in England because we had a game at Wembley. And the report came out. We were all kind of reading it. And they asked me to do media, like to be the first person to talk on it. And carrying that weight and responsibility to like say what was on our hearts, which was like, we got to get rid of all these bad actors. Like, this is unacceptable. And also learning how players need to take care of themselves and how it all looks different, because I don't think at that time we all really knew how to take care of one another and how our coaches and administration, like all these groups above us, how to help us and the resources that we needed. And it was a huge learning experience for all of us. And it's so sad that it took these things to happen for these changes to be made. I look back now and, you know, the policies that we've created, the protections and everything that have come about because of this, like, it's going to protect those that come after us. We failed the ones that were abused and harassed. And it's, you know, looking back at the NWSL, like, that will always be a very dark part of its history. And we're not done. You know, there are still bad actors that we need to get rid of, but hopefully we're heading in the right direction.
I think, again, a lot of that thanks to you. And I think that even the idea of asking you about that in your retirement interview honestly just speaks to like how I see you as somebody who never shies away from talking about what's difficult and who wants to keep putting this messaging out there into the world of there's room to grow. We're going to push for it. And we're all responsible for the environment that we're a part of. We've covered so much today. We've gone through so much of your career, and it's been fun. It's been sad. There have been a lot of ups and downs throughout just this past hour. I wanted to ask you about your legacy. How are you hoping to be remembered by your teammates and the soccer community as a whole?
Like I said before, I think it would be the highest honor for players to say that I was a player's player, that they felt that they could rely on me for anything, you know, if it was something bad, if it was something they needed, if it was something we all needed, that they could come to me and trust me with that. I think that's, you know, a very high compliment. As a steward of the game, I hope people will remember me as someone who absolutely left the game better than how we found it. And like you said, I hope people remember me as someone who was willing to use my voice and my platform and to push for changes, to push to make things better, to make the sport more accessible to everyone. And as a soccer player, I hope people are like, yeah, she gamed. She was a damn good center back.
She gave several elements of her face in order to win tournaments.
Exactly. She was willing to sacrifice it all.
You've spent the last few years of your club career at Portland, who I admit have some of the best and most loyal fans in the country. And earlier on, we referenced what was kind of an Irish exit. You are telling us that you're retiring now after the season's over. So to the fans who may not get to celebrate you in person, what do you want to say to them?
Just a huge thank you for being you. Playing against Portland early on, like, that was always the game that I circled, because it's such a special thing to play in a packed stadium with the support that the Thorns get. And having gotten to play here for the last 5 years is so special. And I just want to thank the supporters for showing up week in and week out, but also for caring about us and demanding things from the organization when it needed to be demanded, and not letting us feel alone as players. Like, we felt like we were in this with you. And to be able to celebrate the 22 2022 championship with you guys, like at the airport, all those people that came and we got to hoist the trophy for you all. Like, just thank you for making this such a special place. And I've played in a lot of places and I can say like it is something truly special here. And I chose to live here. You know, I've been living here longer than I've played here. So my roots to this city and to this community, like, they're endless.
That was really beautiful, Becky. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you how you're processing the growth of this league now, after playing at a high school stadium in Kansas City, your first years there, and now the U.S. Women's National Team has achieved equal pay. Kansas City has a women's soccer-specific stadium. The NWSL has a team with valuations of $250 million. You have been through so many versions of what women's soccer is. How do you think about that?
I think damn right. Like we all knew it was there. We all knew we had the potential to be at this place that we are now. We just needed the investment and we needed the belief from people with deep pockets and influence. And I think clearly we've garnered that. We've got so much and we've pushed for so much. There is still more that we need to push for. But I think about those early days, I mean, even back into the WPS to now and how far we've come, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And to think that I got to play a small part in that is like, I'm very proud.
Is there one single thing from your career that you're most proud of?
Not one single thing. I think it's a collection of small things. And maybe they're considered big things. But it's been a wild ride.
I'm going to ask you another hard question that might make your tears keep coming.
Okay, great.
What are you going to miss the most about soccer?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to miss the locker room. And even as an introvert, being surrounded by 25 women, you would think she would not choose that answer. But just the camaraderie and, you know, these last 5 years sitting next to Klingenberg and just like yucking it up every day. I'll miss the training, you know, just the stupid warm-ups where you're just talking about stupid shit. Like I'm going to miss that. And like we said earlier, like that sense of accomplishment and purpose of knowing what you need to do that day and either getting it done or not getting it done, but then working that next week to get it done. And just that constant challenge and growth that you get as a professional athlete. And damn, yeah, winning is super fun too. Like I will miss that feeling at the final whistle where you're like, yes, like that was a solid performance and you did it with this group and you're celebrating with this community. Like I'll miss that for sure.
Yeah, I think that you definitely will miss all those things. There are different things in this next chapter of our lives that are great that we didn't have before. There are things that we'll never have again, and that's really hard, I think, to accept. But I hope that a lot of the friendships that you've made are lasting, and I know that you and I have this really great relationship that I'm so honored to have with you. And so it leads me to my last question, Becky. What's next? And what are you most excited about for this next chapter?
What's next? I mean, I just love soccer too much to leave it. And so if you'll have me, Sam, I would certainly love to continue doing this pod with you and with Lynn. And I mean, who knows? Like I just did this little broadcast boot camp at USC that was really cool. So I got thrown into all these different sports media silos and, you know, just trying different things out. So who knows? Maybe you'll see me around next season talking soccer, footy with friends.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I certainly hope to see you around in person, more podcasting together. I'm really, really proud of you, Becky. It has been like truly one of the greatest honors of my career to be your teammate. And the idea that I get to continue working with you is so exciting. I feel like I must have done something right to still be this connected to you. I would just want to give you one last opportunity to say anything else that we may have missed, but otherwise,
I mean, just a huge, huge thank you to everyone that has helped me along this crazy journey of my career. And I will let you know eventually how important you are to me. But just for now, just thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Congratulations.
Thanks, Sammy.